All right, everybody. It's Kate Richburg, and it is that time. It is Wednesday, September 4th. We got here. We got to September. Apologies for being a little bit tardy today. I had to restart all of my equipment. We're moving things around here, and it looked like when I went to press play, my router was unplugged up here. But now I'm good. I'm ready to go. We are all set. My goodness, everyone is here. Wow. Let's go through, see who's here. I just cleaned my glasses. Not too bad. Janice is here, of course. Hello, JP, and thank you for doing your moderating today. Gosh, everyone was here. A lot of you were here early, so really apologies for that. As I said, sometimes the internet just has to work its kinks out. Let me see who's here. Yes, it is so great to see everyone. Janice and I, as you know, we had our big announcement yesterday about Beadshop coming back to Fresno. No more third-party fulfillment center. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun with your orders, with all kinds of new stuff. So if you didn't see our big announcement, look on yesterday's live. And if you didn't open yesterday's newsletter, open it because all the info is in there. There'll be more info, of course, to come. Let's see. Janice, you're getting a lot of love from people who were so happy to see you yesterday. And JP, we love it when we go live together. Janice and I have, it's been a busy summer with the retreat and Janice having COVID and me, hiring Miranda here and getting her up to speed, though she is so fast and clever and smart. She's doing a great job. But this fall, we'll be able to do some more fun projects together. Though, there's that meme that goes around that says being an adult is just saying, oh, once I get through this, things will calm down. Don't we always say that? Good. It looks like everybody mostly is in good health, though those of you who are putting in the chat that you're kind of a little under the weather. Here's hoping that you all are feeling better soon. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through real quick. Yes, Janice, a lot of love for your pearls you were wearing yesterday. I was thinking more about that project. So if you didn't see the live broadcast yesterday, not only is it worth it to see the announcement, but a close-up of Janice's great necklace. Let's see. And I love this. Janice, same. They are our beads. I am only right now the steward of them. So one big community, and we feel so lucky that you're all a part of our tribe of beaders for sure. Let's see. It looks like I'm just going. There was a request for seed pearls, Karen. I'll keep an eye out. I think that fall pearls are, they're always in. They're always in for me, 100%. But pearls, I think, are, of course, so many people are wearing them and loving them. We love them here at Beadshop. We will look for some more for the fall. I have a great pearl vendor friend who we've been buying from forever. So maybe they'll have some. Yeah, it is. My mom is saying it is going to be 104 plus. I got 105 on my watch, but hopefully this is the last gasp of super hot summer. That's what we're hoping. And if folks, if you're watching and you're watching this, especially on the replay, You can certainly find us on the replay on YouTube. You can check the time stamping and fast forward through all of this chit chat. I love this. Here's Deb saying, Janice, because of your necklace, I was up until 3 a.m. designing a necklace. You inspired me to start tonight, which is awesome. Yeah, Miranda is, I'll tell you what, Miranda is acclimating herself to the world of beads. She came to us from the world of hairstyling into the world of beads. And she is lightning quick, super accurate. We are so fortunate to see her. And you'll see more of Miranda, of course, in the coming days. So let's see. Okay. What have I got? Oh, thanks for the love on my earrings. If you're watching my socials on Bead Kate, and let me put our reminder up, of course, you saw that I've been having fun with some of the techniques that Cynthia taught us from the retreat. She taught us these great, I don't know if I can get in there, these great techniques with UV resin that I hope to be sharing more with you this fall. So fun. But I've been making earrings like crazy. I just love them. So if you're on my socials, you can find me across the web, Kate Richburg Jewelry Educator, of course, Bead Kate. You can find us all on our socials on Beadshop, our wonderful Facebook page where you share so much great info, our Instagram at beadshop.com, and of course our Pinterest pages that have so much great content over there, great ideas. Hit that like, subscribe, and notification button if you're watching or rewatching on YouTube. We really appreciate it. Reach out to us at info@beadshop.com. And of course, we're all over the web at beadshop.com. But as I was saying, on my socials, you've seen these. Tomorrow is Art Hop here in Fresno, or as we like to say in Fresno, Frez Yes. And it's a lot of fun. M Street Studios is really shaping up. As I said, Miranda's partner JoJo just got their studio over there, and she does industrial sewing machines, which is great. I can just look out my window and see a plethora of beautiful industrial sewing machines. Makes my heart happy. There is a rug maker there, artists, print makers. My good friend Rena at Create Studio Fresno and Thrifted by Mija. She does really great stuff there. So if you're in Fresno and it's the third Thursday, please join us for Art Hop. But you'll see these debuting over at Art Hop tomorrow in my studio. And keep an eye out for my socials. I may pop some stuff up there as well. Let's see what we've got here. Any more questions? Oh my goodness, Kelly, I'm so sorry that you're down for the count. You know, when I broke my foot falling in my kitchen. This was a few years ago, but I am right there with you, my friend. So sorry, Kelly, that you're a little bit under the weather. Yes, Margaret, this is a dress that I made. So coming soon, next year, my France retreat, I'm not doing beading. We are going to do some beading. We're going to do a little bit of embellishing and stuff because beads are always near and dear to my heart. But we are going to make my French wardrobe with Kate in Dufort. More info to come on that. I'm getting together with my buddy Jen Cushman. We're talking about the logistics of that. Yes, we're going to have sewing machines. Yes, you'll be able to hand sew, and no, you need no sewing experience at all. Okay, so, oh goodness, your knee and your foot. Well, here is some healing vibes back to you. All right. I think we've so many comments about people breaking their feet. Last year when we were at a girls' weekend with all my besties from college, one of my friends fell down the stairs, broke her foot. So please, ladies of a certain age, let's be careful. Keep walking. I walked this morning. Keep using those feet, using those bones. getting them out there. There's also going to be more information, as I talked about, also for our next San Juan Bautista retreat coming up, of course, next year. So we've got a lot of in-person opportunities coming, a lot of virtual opportunities coming. So that's that. All right. So let me get to what we've got going today. Okay. Our master class today, of course, is wire. We've got wire going on, and this is episode 2 of wire techniques. And today we are going over the basics. Now, last show, and I want to put this up here so we can talk about it. Last month, we started, hang on, this isn't wanting to upload. Bear with me here just a second. There we go. Last month, we had a lot of fun talking about tools, and it was a really good, if I do say so myself, intro to wire. Well, today we're going to go over some things that you folks may already know, but I think you'll glean some good tidbits from it wherever you are on, the wire, your wire road. Pardon me. Nope, that's not what I wanted to upload. Hang on. Where is it? Is it this one? Maybe. Oh, I know where it is. Hang on. There we go. Upload, please. There we are. So today for episode 2, we're going to go over, there it is, some basic techniques. Rosary and wire wrap loops. We're going to delve into some Briolette wrapping. I'm going to talk a little bit about pre-made jump rings to connect your pieces. We're going to get into jump ring making later on in this series. And we're going to talk about wire wrapping a disc or object without holes. Okay. And you'll see kind of my theory behind it. I'm not a very traditionalist when it comes to doing stuff like that, but I think you'll pick up some good tips for sure. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Let me add this to the stage. Let me grab my glasses, though you can see them here. Come on, speed up. There it is. There it is right there. Okay, perfect. We're going to start with rosary loops. Okay, and you may remember this piece from, let me zoom out here, from a while back when we did some fun things with Beadshop studio stuff, right? And we did some of these rosary loops here. Well, I'm going to continue on this vein, talking about wire wrap loops and rosary loops. We're going to start off by talking about the difference between round nose pliers, right? And I've got a bunch kind of sitting here that we can start talking about. Let me put these over there. Stuff you need for rosary loop or wire wrapped loop success. Okay. You're going to need, and I've got some wire over there. Do I have everything I want? I think so. If I don't, I'll go grab it. What you need here, my friends, is a set of good round nose pliers, or what is known as a rosary plier, right? These round nose, this is what makes your loop, right? Because the loops, the plier is round, the heads of the plier are round. So the roundness of this tool acts like a little mandrel, right? To shape your wire. So these are for rounding, not opening and closing. Okay, I can't say this enough, because when we put the jaws of this round nose plier together, can you see there's a little bit of air in there? See that? That air, if you were using this to open and close a jump ring or open and close a like a loop, since these tips are rounded, there's only a little bit of contact, so it only grabs a little bit of that wire to open and close, right? So that means you kind of have to really smash down on the wire to grab it, kind of like this. Let me cut this piece of wire off. And 9 out of 10 times, right, if you're like bending this or pulling the wire against this, that round plier, it's kind of hard to see here, but that round plier will leave like a little divot or a little dent in your wire because you're compressing it so hard to try and move the wire that this will mark your wire when you're using it. Okay, so round nose pliers, remember, these are for looping, not bending. Looping, not bending. Okay, the bending plier is our chain nose, which are flat. Here's another round nose plier here. Let me put that out. They are, for bending, you need a chain nose. You need either a bent chain nose like this, right? See how when I close these up, the tips, everything comes together nice and tight. Here, there's no space in between. And also, these jaws are nice and smooth, so they're not going to mark your wire. Okay. And Margaret, exactly right. If you do it enough with, if you try and open and close with the tips of these pliers enough, these tines here will become misaligned. Okay. That's what'll happen for sure. And yes, exactly, Mira. The force of the pressure, it's concentrated so much, like on just this tiny little space, that it will mark that wire and compress that metal. Okay. Let me see. I'm looking to see if Carrie, would a looper like, yeah, so you might have one of these. This is called a 6-step round nose. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today too. I like this 6-step, but I feel like it's I feel like it's a great addition to your round nose or your rosary. I don't think it's a replacement. Carrie's asking, would a looper like mine do the same if it has like a channel on one side and the round nose on the other? I've seen those, and I've actually used them back in the days when I was with Lisa Kelly over at Beadshop. I think we may have carried those. A lot of people really like them because one side is like a channel. Here's the channel here. And then one side is a round nose, right? So when you're turning, that channel kind of helps to form that wire around your tool. I'm a big fan of just simple, plain round nose pliers, but some people love that channel round nose. And if that's you, more power to you, right? More power to you. So let's talk about these round nose pliers and how they make round nose, or how they make loops, okay, and what the difference is. Let me gather. There's some others that we've had in the past. Let me see. This is an old school. Let me see. I had something over here. Bear with me here just a second while I move these tools over. I am knee deep in tools. You guys should see this studio while we are moving and stuff. Everything is a little bit of a nightmare, I'll tell you, but it will all soon be back in order for sure. Okay, and I want a heavier gauge. Let me get my wire bin. What color do I want to use today? Here's some parawire, some 14 gauge. I want some 24, I'm sorry, I meant 24 gauge. Let me get a little bit more out here. Here we go. Here's 22. This is nice. And this one's also nice. 18 gauge. That's what I'm looking for. Because this 18 is nice. It'll show up on the camera nicely. Okay. So let's see. Let me take a look and see here if there's any other questions. Okay. Okay, so round nose. And some people are talking about how you can get round nose pliers from that have the markings and the sizes on them. You know, I have had like these old ones here, these rosary pliers. I've probably had these at least 30 years or so. I find that the less distraction that are on my tools, at least for me, the better, right? And if you want a measurement, let's say you want a measurement on your tool, right? And let me use these because they don't have anything on there. Though you can see a lot of these do have little marks on them, but let's mark this one here. Let's say that you wanted to know like how large of an outs or an inside diameter loop you wanted to make. So I just get my caliper and I'd come around here and I will make sure it's at 0 and I can measure. Let's say that I wanted like a 2 millimeter loop, right? Or thereabouts. That 2 millimeter is going to be, can you see that? That's 2 right there. It's a little bit bigger. Let me see if I can angle it perfectly. Now I can come in, I can hold it there. Let me get back down to 2. I need more than one hand here. And I can use my marker, my Sharpie, to give myself a little mark right there. Okay? So that's my 2 millimeter mark right there. And then I'm going to get, that's a heavy Sharpie. I want a skinny Sharpie, which I've got over there. I'll use my skinny Sharpie and really get myself a nice line to follow it up. Okay? So then you'll know, what size you're going for. So here's this. Let me get my Sharpie and I'm just going to come around. And that's my 2 millimeter mark right there. Can you see it? Right? And that Sharpie mark will stay on there a pretty good long time. Okay? Until once, and some of these have been on here forever. It'll eventually wear off right here, but you can also take it off with some nail polish remover, acetone, or even alcohol. I think we'll take it off like an alcohol rub, little alcohol, wipe, and then you can remark them at any time. Okay, so they'll come off, but it's no big deal. And sometimes you're done with them and you want them to come off, right? So here's this. Okay, so that's a 2 millimeter size. So then you can also, like with this 6-step, let's take a look at the sizes on these. Okay, and I believe it's on the product listing, but this is an outer diameter. Let me see. How am I gonna? Let me put this pen down first. These have 6 different sizes. So this is a 2, little over 2. This one is 2.8, 4, 6, 8, and 9 millimeter. Okay. So yeah, you can always mark for consistency. Now, Margaret, I'm the same. For consistency's sake, like if I am doing a project, sometimes I'll mark it, but most of the time, I'll be honest, I eyeball it, I wing it. And the more your eye gets trained to do that, the faster and more accurate you'll be. Okay. And you really don't have to have your loops be exactly right on. You don't. I mean, you could. And if that is something that makes your heart happy, then by all means do it. But for me, doing a lot of measuring when I don't have to, I don't want to do it. Right. Here is my little ruler here, and I'm going to cut a 3-inch piece of wire, and I'm going to do it with 18 gauge. Okay. Just so, and I just said I don't want to measure, but let's measure so you can see what's happening with this 3-inch. So this is 18 gauge, like I said. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to cut my wire here at 3 inches. And we're going to start off with a rosary loop. I'm going to come in, and I've used my flush cutter, and I'm going to cut this other end here as well, just so it's completely flush on both ends. And there's my 18 gauge piece of 3 inches. Okay. So when you're making a wire wrapped loop segment, right, like this, I kind of think about the wire in thirds. Okay, so if I'm pre-cutting my wire, a lot of times though, if I'm doing repetitive stuff like this, I'll work just off the spool, right? I'll string my beads on, I'll wire wrap the end, and then I'll measure and cut right off the spool, so I'm conserving as much wire. Yeah, these little these little metal rulers, we carry them on Beadshop, I believe we do. They're super handy, this nice little straight edge. Okay, so here, if this is my piece of wire, I think about it, if this is 3 inches, I'll break it up into thirds. Okay, and I'll do this just visually, but for today, I'll mark it so you kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. So this center part here, this is usually what I allot for the bead. Okay. This part will be for the loop on this side. That's the right. And this one is for the loop on this side, the loop for the left. Okay. Oh, we don't anymore, JP. Well, they're pretty easy to find. It's just like a jewelry ruler. I wasn't sure if we did or not. We'll see if we have room for it when stuff gets back to Fresno. It's a handy little tool. But we are going to have more finite space here. So when you're cutting your wire, okay, for a rosary loop, you want to think about how much wire the bead is going to actually take, right? So this measurement in the center, this is the variable, okay, usually. This is 1 inch here because I cut 3 inches. But let's say you're wire wrapping something smaller like this pearl. This pearl's a lot smaller than that inch. Okay, so you want to visualize whatever this center piece is, or the center measurement, that's what equals the bead that you're going to wire wrap. Okay, these two ends here, this equals the loop, right? Like I've written. So if you want a loop that's larger, you might need a little bit of a longer wire on each side. Or if it's a little skinnier wire, a smaller loop, you're going to need a little bit less. I'm going to wire wrap on this 18 gauge. I found these. These are faceted onyx beads from our Tucson finds when I did the Tucson finds back in February when we were in Tucson. And I believe this hole is 18 gauge. Okay. So here it is right here. So can you see how that It's like my 3-inch, my inch mark here. And then I've got a little bit more there and a little bit more there. Okay. So, so this actually might be a little long to wire wrap this piece, but 3 inches, I'm going to go with this 3-inch. So what I do when I start to wire wrap, I'm going to go down, I'm going to grab it at about that inch mark. So I know this is about 1/3, this is about 2/3. So I know that I have enough left to put the bead on and I have enough left to wire wrap it. Does that make sense? So here, let's start the rosary loop. I'm going to, or the wire wrap loop, sorry. I'm going to bend using this chain nose plier. I'm going to bend right over the top of it. Okay. And so I have my right angle. Okay. And when I teach this, hang on, I need to cut. Where did my 18 gauge wire go? It was just right here. No, seriously, here it is. Okay. Phew. Let me cut a couple of 3-inch pieces here. Some of you who have been watching me teach wire for so many years have seen me do this trick before, but this will be also a good visual reference for you to screenshot in a second as well. Okay, so that, then I think I need 5 pieces of wire. Okay, and you can make yourself one of these as well. I used to have these mounted on a little board for teaching, but I have no idea what the sands of time did with that. I'm going to straighten it out. I can use my wire straightener if I want, but I'll just use my hands. So I'm going to go down here. Sorry about that, everybody. My internet just fell out. Hopefully everybody is still here. It looks like your comments are. Bear with me here for just a second. Hang on. Sorry about that. I got it. Apologies, everyone. Sorry. Let me get this. We're back. Sorry. Ugh. Technical issues. Technical. So irritating. Bear with me here just a second. Let me get back on thing. And I'm connected. And here we are. All right. Get that back in there. Oh, super irritating, wasn't it? Now I have to have a little drink of coffee. Now back to our regularly scheduled programs. All right. Okay. Like I was saying, internet. We've made our right angle bend here. Hang on, let me focus this real quick. There we go. Okay, there we are. That looks all right. Okay, so now I'm going to come back in. We'll do this step again. We bend at a right angle. Now I'm going to use the tool where I went at that 2 millimeter. I'm going to use that, right? So I'm going to come in, I bent. Now I'm going to go up and over my round nose plier using this as the mandrel, okay? Up and over the top, just like that, okay? So that's the second step, right? So we've got this, straighten that out. We've got this one, right angle bend, up and over, okay? And now I'll bend. And the reason I bend with my chain nose is that I want a nice, tight, right angle bend here, right? If I bend using my round nose, and if you bend using your round nose, that's fine. I mean, the wire wrap police are not going to show up at your doorstep, right? That's not really an issue. But if I bend, some people do this to save a step, right? But can you see the difference? It's there, right? The difference between this right angle bend in the 18 gauge with the round nose and the difference between that right angle bend with my chain nose. It is a sharper bend. And I feel like further on down the line, when you make the loop with this round nose, right? Or with this, when you can finish the loop after you've used the chain nose, that this tight bend, it's not so much of a tight bend here, and your loop will be more teardrop shaped than round. Does that make sense? You'll see it. I'll make a wire wrap loop with this one and with this one so you can see the difference. Okay, so we've done this step 1 over here, step 2 over here. I have come up and over the top like this, right, to make my loop. Now I've turned it to the side, right? And I'm going to come in, I'm going to put this loop back on my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to pull this piece of wire underneath to complete the loop. Do you see that? So here is that. Okay, and we call that the little man with the scarf step. Let me zoom in, focus, there we go. Okay, if this loop is at all tilting to the side, right? And you can see that if I were to draw a line in the middle following that wire that was coming up, see how the loop isn't exactly centered on the head of this wire. Again, I'm being super nitpicky here, but the more that you look at these little tips, the more you make these little minor corrections, and the better overall your loops will look on the long end. Okay, so I'm here, I've taken them out, and now I'm going to turn this. Let me pull this up just a little. And I just pull this down just a hair, right? I've hardly made a movement, right? But you can see that this wire is a little more centered underneath. Okay, and I'm going to straighten this out. Myra, I don't rotate my plier because of years of teaching this. People don't really understand the direction of rotating the plier. So I let you make that jump on your own. Okay. So you could from down here just rotate it up, and I do that a lot. But for teaching, for the steps, so people don't miss that step, I say take it out and put it back on the lower jaw of the plier. Okay. So now, next, we're going to wire wrap it. Okay. So let's get to this point. I've bent with my chain nose up and over the top, conforming this wire to the barrel, taking it out, putting it down on the lower jaw, pulling this around and gently centering it. All right. So now I'm here. So now we're going to wrap. Now, this is where everybody's personal preference comes in, right? Sometimes, especially like this is 18 gauge, so this wire is a little tougher, okay, a little stiffer to use. Sometimes if I'm using thinner gauge and I don't have anything in this loop, I'll take the loop off, put it on the other jaw, and wire wrap here with the round nose in the loop to keep its shape. Okay? If I'm not doing that, okay, what I do sometimes is I'll hold it with my chain nose flat. Sometimes that's a little easier for me to grip, right? And this is my non-dominant hand. I'm right-handed, so I hold it with my left hand. Sometimes I hold it at the bend of my chain nose and see how or my bent chain nose. So see how my wire, the heads of my tool are pointing away from the wire, and it gives me more space here. You can also do it with your really curved 90-degree chain nose. I like this a lot, right? And this allows me this this bent chain. And I usually, when I do this, when I wire wrap, I rest my hand sometimes on the table like this, right? My hand is supported. The bent chain nose, this curve really holds it, so I'm not trying to maneuver it so much. And sometimes, and I'll be honest, depending on the plier I can find, whoops, caught up in that peyote stitch, which we're not doing. Remember how I talked about last time, these are our Xuron, our snub nose pliers here that are short and wide, right? Those work really great for gripping. This one is also an excellent gripper. This is the chisel nose. It's not a cutter. Some of you think, oh, it's a cutter. It's not. It's just a chisel nose, where see how here it's diagonal on the head? So I can really reach in there and grab the tips for wire wrapping. I love this. You can also grab the wire with your bent chain. There's a whole myriad of pliers. You just need to find the ones that you like. I am really into 90-degree bent chain and this chisel nose. Let me clear the deck so you can really see what I do here. I'm going to grab this. Again, I'm also supporting my hand on my beading surface. Sometimes I wrap in the air, but sometimes my hand likes support. Okay, so yeah, this chisel nose is great. And you know, Xuron, of course, it's US made right here in the US in Maine. So see, I grab it on there and I'm pulling that around. And notice, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see my hands. Notice how my hands are working with each other, okay? Not only am I pulling this hand around my right hand this way, I'm pulling my left hand down a little bit so my hands are working in tandem to help both hands are working, not just one hand is taking all of the brunt of it. Okay, so I've come around, I've wrapped 180. Now I'm going to come back here, grab this with the chisel nose, and what I like about it is the chisel nose is hefty, right? So it really, and flat, so it really grabs it, and I can pull it around. Okay, so that's one wrap. Now I'm going to come in, grab another, and this piece of wire that I cut just happens to give me exactly the number of wraps that I want. And for this 18 gauge, it's 2. And see here, this one right here, see how that chisel nose is fitting right into here, and I am closing it up. Okay, chisel nose we have on the website. We've carried them for a while. Zeron was kind enough years ago to send me a pair of each of these. They were made for chainmail workers, right? And that's the snub nose and that chisel nose. Let me get a little closer here. Well, treat yourself, because right now, my friends, as you know, we're having that moving sale, right? So it's a good time to treat yourself to those pliers. But you can see I've been able, with this chisel nose, to just scoot this little piece of wire right around there. Okay. So now it's time to put the bead on, which I will do. And I'll do this second side a little bit faster. So I'll get my bent chain. I'll bend it over the top like this. And I'll go up and over the top. I've got so many, I'm plier rich here. What I'll do is for this, I kind of have to wedge. This is usually an issue for people. Okay. Let me scoot out a bit here. The first side is really easy because you don't have a bead in your way, right? But the second side is a little more difficult because the bead is in your way, so you can't always wedge the plier up to where you want the size of your loop to be here, okay? So what I kind of do here is, see how I can come in kind of at an angle a little bit, but I shove, that's a technical term, this wire down as close as I can to my mark, okay? Then I'll go up and over, okay? And it does not, Cindy, this does not fit snug in the loop. Can you see how that's not snug? There's a little bit of air. There we go. There's the air, right there. Okay, but I'm going to show you how to fix it. Okay. So I'm going to go up and over here, up and over, up and over. Now, take a look. See, my loop is all the way over here. It's not like this one where I didn't have the bead in there, right? The loop is tilting all the way to the left. Okay. So what I do now is when I drop this tool, this loop to the bottom jaw, and I bring this wire around with my finger, I turn the plier and I turn the bead unit. So see, there's the loop. I've just made the loop so it's kind of out of the way. Now, remember here how I went around and underneath and I straightened this one out a bit? I'm going to do the same thing, but this is going to take a little more straightening. So see that little scarf that our friend was wearing? See how now the scarf is like flying way up above his head, right? So you're going to have to pull that scarf back down so that loop is centered. See that? Now that loop is center. All right. So now you're able to wire wrap. All right. So we tilt this. Anyone else getting kind of sweaty? So intense. I'm all, whew. All right. So now you could also use, I used the chisel nose last time. Let me use the bent chain this time. I've got the 90-degree bent chain in my non-dominant hand right here. And I've got my bent chain right here. Okay. So I'll come in and I'll make that first wrap. Okay. So see, now it's centered. So it doesn't matter what size loop you make, right? If you need to make a huge loop, you just make it to the side and then you roll that loop over so it's centered on top of this wire that's coming up out of your bead hole. I hope that makes sense, right? This is almost 40 years of wire wrapping experience talking to you, my friends. So, you know, where I'm at and where some of you are at, though I know many of you have been wire wrapping for as long as I have, right? But it's just a good little tip. So there we go. I've got my 2 wraps there. I've got some extra here. I sold these, Mel, I sold these at the Tucson. When I was in Tucson, this was one of the very first Tucson drops I did. I really love these. They're the Onyx Big Drill Micro Facet, right? So now I'm going to clip that extra away and I'll use that chisel nose to just tighten that little piece of 18 gauge right in there. Okay. And I automatically sometimes, that doesn't make any sense. I usually, that's a better word, take my tools and rotate that loop so they're facing the same way. And usually I have my loops facing the same way. Let me line these up, my friends, so you can take a screenshot of the progression. That goes to that side, then it goes there. Here's the right angle bend, and there's the cut wire. Okay, oh, here we go. Okay, and then let me put in the chisel nose. You can see that. There we go. Okay. Screenshot time, screenshot time, screenshot time with 18 gauge. Okay. Perfect. All right. Yes, JP, I will show you. Let's take this down. Let's take this down a gauge. Okay. So, let's get one of these guys and let's get that piece I was working on earlier. Let me get this out of the way and that out of the way. Let's talk about this bead right here. Okay. Let's do another wire wrap loop. Then we're going to move to Rosary. Okay. Janice was asking about doing a cap, right, on this. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to wire wrap a little cap on this so you can see it. It also works nicely on a pearl. A couple of great questions. So while we're looking at this, I'm going to address a couple of things. Let me grab my coffee. Sharon says, I have a bad habit of misusing my tools. You know what, Sharon? They're your tools, right? So again, there's no wire police. There's no tool police that's coming at you. Do I cut paper sometimes with my fabric scissors? Yes. Do I tell you not to cut paper with your fabric scissors? Also, yes. So don't worry. You know, if once in a while you use a tool for something else, it's usually not the death of the tool unless you're cutting memory wire with your wire cutters. Okay, so don't beat yourself up, right? Just remind yourself we can only strive to do better. Karen K, it's not my wrists that are a problem. It's this thumb joint, right? I'm sure you're all nodding your head in agreement here. My wrists are fine. I don't know if I have, a naturally strong wrists from doing this for so long, but it's right here, these guys, that I have trouble with. And it's just rest, right? And again, I've noticed now that if I rest my hands or support my hands in some way when I'm wire wrapping, it's a lot better. There is a knitter, my knitter friend, his name is Carson Demers. He does an ergonomic class for knitters, but it also applies to beaders as well. Carson is a pretty groovy dude. You can find him on the internet. He's written a book about it and stuff. He's a great guy. So you can find him, Carson Demers. I think it's Deemers. For tips for ergonomic, but these are almost 58-year-old hands, right? I mean, look at that thumb joint is not as skinny and shapely as it used to be. So just rest and Voltaren for me for now. And an ice roller seems to work, but thankfully my hands are still, holding up, thankfully. There is a couple of other questions here. Let me see. There's another question. Sorry. Oh, and here, Linda, this is a good one. Do I wrap the wire right up to the bead or do I leave a tiny space? Really good question. And I'm sorry I left that out. Let me see if I can zoom in to this. Okay. I mean, let's face it, our hands, beaters are, a lot of my beater friends, we're not spring chickens anymore. We're like fall chickens, right? So, we just do the best that we can, right? And wire wrap until we can't anymore. And then, I don't know, we'll do something else. That's why I love using my embroidery machine, because when my hands don't work, I can still do something creative. I'll just sit there and watch my embroidery machine embroider away. I don't know. I know I'm just sick crafting puppy, right? So here we go. Can you see I cut the wire off? When I cut it right here, I left, this is really nitpicky, but it's about a 1/16 inch of a space right in there, so that when I come around and tuck this end in, this wire has somewhere to go. So, and that usually naturally occurs because when I cut, my tool automatically kind of gives me a little bit of space there, the head of the wire cutter when I do that. Then when I come in and push and tighten like this, I have just enough space so that wire tucks in underneath. If you don't have that tiny bit of space there and the bead is fragile, you will run the risk of cracking your bead at the top. Okay, so leave a little air. Okay, that's that question. Okay, anything else? There's a lot of, close that middle jump ring. Yeah, Ma, I will, I promise. We'll do that. Let me see. Oh, and Carson, thank you, Janice. I knew you'd find him. Carson Demers, Modern Daily Knitting. Yes, he is fantastic. You'll find him there. And Voltaren is, it's Voltaren, Kelly. It's sold here in the US. It's like an anti-inflammatory cream for your hands. It used to be prescription only, but now you can get it OTC, over the counter. And you may have something like that in the UK as well. I'm sorry, I don't have the more information on that, but it is Good. Let me see if I've got, yes, Voltaren. Thanks, Carrie, for that. Okay. So let's get to wire wrapping with the cap. Let me do that. Yes, Voltarol. See, there you go. I knew in UK you had something like it. It's great. Don't overdo it on the Voltaren, but yeah, I use it a lot. And it's great that it's over the counter because it used to be $1 billion and now it's a little less than $1 billion. Yes, and thank you, Mira. Mira knows the generic. Voltaren is the name brand there. So yes, diclofenac. That's what keeps Chris's knees working. Okay. This pebble here, I'm going to do this at Kate speed so you can see this. This is 24 gauge. It's going to be a little faster and easier for me to wire wrap with. We're going to come in, and I've done a longer piece of wire here. So I'm going to go down a little bit more than my third, right? So here, and then I'm going to go up and over the top with my round nose. See, this is the flip and come underneath with my wire here instead of taking it out and replacing it on the jaw. Then I come in and I'll hold it here and I will wire wrap this closed. A lot of times with thinner gauge, like this 24, I can wire wrap it using my hands, though this is one of the worst wire wraps I've ever made. Let me fix it. Go. And there we go. That's still not the best. That's a little bit better. Okay. Now, this end of this wire is a little funky, so I'm going to put this away. We're going to go ahead and we're going to add this this nugget. Sometimes I measure with my bent chain, bend up and over the top, down and under. I'm just keeping this in the loop here. Wire wrap it around. And then to wrap a cap, see how I just keep going? Right? I just keep wrapping. And depending on how much wire you have, you can make a long cap or a short cap. Right? But can you see how that's kind of free-formy? So whatever kind of works for you in that situation. This could have been a little bit longer. I just used kind of a random scrap piece of wire that I had here. So I probably wanted this to be a little bit longer. But you could also just kind of make your little curl there, you know, and call it a day. So wrapping a cap, you can wrap it from the top, from the bottom like this. Okay. And then you are good to go here. Okay. So that's the wrapping of the cap. So let's get to just a simple rosary loop. Okay. This wire wrapping is awesome. It looks great, but sometimes, like for earrings, let me get a pair of earrings here. These are some I made a while back. Sometimes for earrings, you just want a loop, right? Janice is giving some good tips here. She's holding the wire with parallel pliers. Parallel pliers are also great to hold your loops with. I've got my parallel pliers right here. Those also work well because they come down, they close like a little elevator door like that, right? Nice. And then Janice continues with her tip here. Also great tips. She'll use a little nail file and file it in. Here's that earring with the what we call a rosary plier. It's like a loop that is just a loop, kind of like a set of rosary beads, right, that are just looped to loop together. Okay, so there's no wire wrapping here. The thing with rosary loops is you need to make sure for these to work, right, that the wire needs to be a heavy enough gauge and the loop needs to be small enough. Okay, the head pins that I've used here, these are 20 gauge. I think they're actually like 21 gauge, but they're a perfect wire gauge size, and the loop is small enough so it has enough kind of the mechanics of this loop. The loop is small enough so it's not so large that it'll pull out easily. When it's small like this, the loop is sturdier and steadier. Okay, so that works. So let me see. So let me grab a head pin. Let me just grab a pin. So that's this here. Okay, and let me grab a bead here. And then I'll come in, and sometimes, see, like this is that 18 gauge. The head of this head pin, it fits, but like only just, right? So sometimes I'll get a little 8/0 bead or a little metal bead or something, and I'll put that on the bottom. See how nice that looks? Thank you, Lynn. I love our parallel pliers too. We carry the parallel pliers in all the different configurations. We carry them in the round and the chain and the flat. I think they're all on the website there. So now, instead of using my plier like this and bending over the top to wire wrap, right, I will bend at the top of the bead hole. Okay, like that. And I'll just bend using my finger. Okay. So then I will go ahead and I'll cut away, usually about this much. Let me measure. I don't know. I always eyeball it. Let me measure that for you. I can't quite. It is, it's about 5/8 of an inch or so, about. But it also really relates to how much wire or how big you want this loop to be. Okay. This is called a rosary plier because it has a cutter here in the center. A cutter is whoops, sorry, I should have had my finger over the top of that. Let me cover it up. Let me call myself out. Something like this, the cutter that's in this rosary plier, and these were specifically made for making rosaries so you could cut and turn, cut and turn. But this one, the cutters are pretty good. They're not as good as cutting it something like this with your flush cutter. But if you're using thinner gauge wire, I think this cutter is okay. Now, whoops, this little 8/0 doesn't want to stay on. Get back on there. Now, I'm just going to go up and over my bend, walking my loop through, continuing to use that round nose plier like a mandrel until that end of the wire hits your bead hole. See that there? We've made a nice round loop. If I needed this to be a little bit smaller, I would have cut a little more wire away. So usually somewhere between about 3/8 to 5/8 of an inch of wire I cut, right? So that's it. That's all there is to a rosary loop. Then that rosary, you open. I do that a lot with this chain nose, this bent chain. I can open it forward, attach it onto whatever it needs to attach to, and then close it up. And if you look at our skill builders over on Beadshop, I have both of these detailed, um, for you to go step by step by step. Lynn, this is a great tip for that. Thank you all for sharing so many tips for this broadcast. If you're making a lot of rosary loops at a time, you can cut a piece of wire the length you need and use it as a measurement for all of your rosary loops. Okay. So next on our agenda, we're going to run over a little bit, folks, because I started a little bit late. But next on our agenda, whoops, let me get rid of that comment so I can see it. We're going to talk about Briolette wrapping. Okay. And then my promise, we'll use those pre-made jump rings. I'll close that jump ring on this necklace to show you the open and closing. And then I'll do a quick overview on wrapping a disc or object without holes. Okay. So let me get rid of this. And let's get back to this. Lily, great question. I always make my loops facing the same way. Okay? Because if I'm connecting them with a jump ring, that means that the jump rings will be consistent and facing the same way. You just need to do what works for you. I would just say be consistent. Okay? So if you're connecting with chain or jump rings, I'd have the loops go the same way. If you're just connecting loop to loop, you can have them connect, one be flat and one be at a 45-degree angle. You just need to be consistent so that your loops will fit together at a 45-degree angle, if that makes sense. Okay. So what did I say? Briolette? Is that what I'm on? Let me show you I put them over here to the side. I'm going to wire wrap these tiny little shells. These were the ones that we had in our Beadshop studio. We still have a few of these left. These little shells and these and the leaves. Here's Alfred. Alfred, what are you doing out here? This is 28 gauge. I want 26 gauge, I think, is what I want. You really have to test your wires on these. These are tiny little holes. So I'm going to start. This is 28 gauge wire here, or 26 gauge. I'm working off the spool. I'm going to clip the end. Sorry, I also didn't cover that. It went flying. I need to re-up my wire etiquette. See here with this Briolette, I need to make sure that it's kind of swinging on the wire. If it's not, and you try and shove a gauge, a heavier gauge, and it doesn't have that movement, you're going to risk breaking your bead. Okay, so here's a 24 gauge. Let me use this, and let me put this on, and let's see how it fits. It fits, and it still swings. All right, it's still okay. But I'm going to go with 26 gauge because I really want to make a tight wrap and stuff here around this Briolette. So I'm going to choose 26. Okay, but 24, this 24 would work as well. All right, so I'm going to just cut off the spool here just to give myself some room. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to come in and I'm going to bend this wire for this Briolette wrap so I have an X at the top of my carved shell. Okay. Now I need to give myself a little bit of room there. The thing is, and I think sometimes this freaks people out. I know it freaks me out, especially if I'm using a Briolette and it is expensive, right? I don't want to crack this hole. I don't want to crack this bead, right? So I give myself just a little bit of air there. so I can still have some movement. Because remember, wire isn't like thread, right? Thread is malleable. It's not going to crack your bead, but wire is stiff. It's hard. So if it goes up against, your stone, and the stone is softer than the wire, your stone is going to give way. Okay. So now I get my chain nose and I come in on both sides of that X and I close the tool up. And that pushes my 2 wires up from that X up to parallel. See that? Now I'm going to place that tool right at the top. This now is just, I'm going to scoot back a little bit so you can see this. This really is now just like wire wrapping a loop. Okay. So I'm going to come in with this short piece. Sorry, lied to you. Long piece of wire. Again, 26 gauge here. So see, this should look kind of familiar. I've come around. Now I'm going to come up and over with my loop, and I want this loop to be kind of small because it's a tiny briolette. I flip this up and I go down and around. So see what I have here? I've made that loop at the top. Now, let me center this over a little. Now I'm going to hang on to that. I picked these up, so that's what I'm going to use, these wide flat chain nose. Okay. And I'm going to take this long piece of wire, I'm going to center everything, and I'm going to wire wrap from the top of that loop to the top of where that little triangle is. And since this is 26 gauge, it's super malleable. Okay, so it's easy for me to wrap. There's not a lot of pressure on that brio, and that brio is not going to break. And see, the brio still has some movement there. Okay, so that's not going to crack or break. Now I pull this long piece of wire down, and I'm going to clip this away, cover that wire, and I'm going to clip that end away. I'm going to push that end in. Again, be careful at this point. This is a place where that brio could crack. So having a little bit of space right there allows you to get the tips of your tool in there and kind of coax them in. But that's it. That's all she wrote on the briolette. We also have a skill builder on the briolette. Let me get a little tighter in there. But if you choose the correct gauge of wire, that is 3/4 of the battle with this, right? The cracking of the briolette comes when you're trying to force, a size 6 onto a size 12, right? When you're trying to force, a size 7 shoe on your size 8.5 foot, right? Makes sense, right? So, okay, there's brio. Let's do one final. Oh, no, I've got 2 more things. Since the camera is really close, up and close, let's talk real quick. This was the one that was giving my mom agita right here, right? This briolette, or this jump ring, wasn't closed completely. We're going to tackle making jump rings on another wire show. But one of the things that I do, and you've seen me do this before when I'm doing this, is when I'm closing this up, or when you're opening or closing a jump ring, I use a straight chain nose and a bent chain, right? You need 2 pliers to do it. And you want to open and close that jump ring so that opening is wide enough to get whatever it is you're putting on the jump ring. And you also want to open it like this way, right? In this plane, not out like this, but you want to preserve the shape of that ring. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to close it up. This bent chain really allows me to get right up against the opening of that ring. See that? And Janice, I see your question. I'll go ahead and do that right after this. But I can really get right in there. And if I'm not hasty, like I was when I put these on the first time, you can see that closes up. And sometimes I have to feel rather than look, right? Because if I can feel there's a burr on the ring, that means, see, I can feel that wasn't closed completely. So let me get that one. It's hard to see sometimes because it'll look closed on one plane, but not the other. There we go. And I move, that's a really good question, Debbie. I will usually hold my left hand stable and I'll move back and forth with this hand, with my right hand. If the ring is a little stiffer or if it's a little bit more of a heavy gauge, I need a little more power, then I'll move my left and my right hand. Okay? But I use the bent chain in my dominant, the straight chain in my non-dominant, and I'll get the tip of this bent chain right up against the opening of that chain nose of the jump ring and pull it open like this. Okay, here it is right here without all the beads, a little bit easier to see. Stabilize it flat on the side, bent chain right there next to the opening. Okay. So right there. And I can see it looks closed here. Let me turn it. See here? Au contraire, mon frère. Not closed. So I have to check it on both planes to make sure that it's closed. Okay. Janice's question, and that's really good. This is also where we can break our briolette, is when we take the wire out to reuse the brio. Let me show you how to do that. Oh, Debbie, real quick. I open the jump ring just as far as I need it to be open to get whatever it is I'm putting on it to fit on easily, right? So I don't have to shove anything through the opening, but I don't open it so large that I have a really big space to close again, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. So here's that brio that I just wrapped, right? This is another briolette breaker. Okay. If I have some space here, what I do a lot of times is I come in and I'll cut right up at the top of the wrapping so I can pull that wrap out of the way. Okay. Now, what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll pull that wire down that's going through the hole of the briolette. Okay. Now, what I'll do is, instead of trying to pull this wire through, because the wire might be, it might be bent, and it might be bent just a little bit where it's hard to see it. But if you try and pull that bend through and the briolette is drilled kind of, close to the top, so there's not a lot of material up here, when you pull it through, it'll crack the top of that brio off. Okay, so I'll come in, I'll get my flush cutter right up against the hole. I'll cut away the excess wire. I'll turn it and I'll pull it. And you can see that pulled right out. Okay. So I really want to make sure that before I pull the wire out of my briolette that it's nice and straight. That's a briolette breaker right there. Janice, I hope that's what you were alluding to. Okay. Let me take a look at this. Yes, the jump ring is also getting a little work hardened because since I'm opening it up here, the jump ring, the metal is getting kind of work hardened on this side, so it also helps to keep it closed. Okay. All right. For my last trick, we're going to talk about, let me put some pliers in here. Let me grab something. I think I've changed my mind about what I want to wrap that doesn't have a hole. Let's get a couple of these things here. These do have holes, but we're going to pretend they don't. Okay. We need to choose a wire gauge for these. Here's a disc. Here's a couple of these pieces from Beadshop Studio. Okay. We're going to pretend that these don't have holes. We're going to pretend that this disc doesn't have a hole. Okay. Maybe I'll do this one because this is a nice shape. It's a nice shade. It's also kind of thin, right? Not too thin. It's still a sturdy bead, but you really want to match your wire gauge to what it is that you're wrapping without holes. Okay. So I think about what I'm wrapping here and the shape of what I'm wrapping, and for it to kind of hold when I'm wrapping something without a hole, so it doesn't slip out of the little cage that I'm making it. Okay. So if we're here and I'm using 2 pieces of wire, those wires are going to come together kind of at the bottom of this piece. And I've got 2 pieces of wire that are kind of coming off like this. Okay. When I come in, I bind these 2 pieces of wire together, and one of these wires is going to go across here on the front and one on the back, and then they're going to get wrapped here at the side. Okay. One around the front, one around the back, wrapped here at the side. Okay. Then the final, your final trick to this is you're going to come in, you're going to bring the wire up and over here and wire wrap around and up and over here. Okay. So you've kind of made what looks like, if this is the piece, your wire kind of comes here, kind of comes here, here, and here. Okay. And that's the same if you do something kind of round as well. If there's a circle or something like this here, you're going to bind those 2 pieces of wire together here and here. Then you kind of take one wire, go around to the front and the back. Let's say that dotted line is the back wire. Bind it around. Okay. And then you'll do the same thing kind of here and here. Sometimes if you have long tails, you might want to bring this wire back down and around and back down and around, like on the front, crisscross it on the front or on the back, right? But you want enough wire so that your cage isn't open on one side so that the piece falls out, right? And you want it to be thin enough, a thin enough gauge that it's malleable enough so that it shapes to the size of the piece that you have. If it's too stiff, you're going to have to bend it too close. That stiff wire will also potentially break the piece as well. 24 gauge is usually what I use for wire wrapping. So let's put that into action. Okay. So I've got some 24 gauge bare copper wire here. Okay. And I am going to cut, that's 6 inches. This is a foot. I'm going to cut 2 1-foot pieces. This is copper, so it's very inexpensive, and I can kind of practice with it, right? So I'm not worried. I can do kind of a practice run. So what I'll do with these 2 pieces, let me zoom out just a little, is I'm going to take one piece, and this is where the parallel pliers really come in handy. Here's my parallel pliers. I'll get them so they're side by side like this. I'll hold them flat in my parallel pliers. It doesn't take a lot of hand strength for me. I'm holding the plier in my dominant hand this time and wire wrapping with my non-dominant. It just depends on what works for you. I could switch it up as well. Sometimes I like to wire wrap with my dominant hand. But see what I'm doing here? And I'm using round wire, Mira. This could be done with half round, and a lot of people use half round for this. I'm not a huge half round wire fan. I use it to make ring shanks and stuff like that, but I don't really have any to hand right now. But the half round is great because it's domed on the top and flat on the bottom, and it sits nice and flat up against the piece that you're wire wrapping. Okay, so you could use either or for this. I'm going to get this side, and I'm going to kind of spread them out like it looks like a little guy jumping with his arms up in the air and his legs, out. Let me kind of even that up. Okay, so see where that wrap is down here. Let me tighten this zoom a little bit. Where that wrap is, I'm going to come in. That wrap goes down to the bottom, and I come up the side. This side's a little messy. Let me fix that. There's a little bit of space there that it's not as clean as it could be. This is the one. That's the culprit. Right there. There we go. Straighten that out. All right, better. This is going here, and yeah, that was the chain nose parallel that I was using. Correct. So see how this 24 gauge just comes around nice and tightly here. There's that little bump in that wire that's driving me crazy. Let me fix it. You're the boss of the wire. Just tell it where to go. There we go. So now this comes around. Now you've got some decisions to make, right? I could just bring this up to the sides like here. I could also just bring it up to the sides like that. And then like this, and then cross it again. Once. Here and here. See that, how that's looking? And that looks pretty cool in the center, right? So I think that's how I'll do it. People also, wire wrappers also, people who do this who are a lot better at it than I am. There's a whole cadre of people who wrap stones that don't have holes. They use a lot of tape. You could also use, I bet you could use clampers, especially on this since it's flat. But you could use painter's tape and tape it down. But look at that clamper, clamps it nicely. I'll come in here and maybe I'll twist this again. Look at how nice that looks. And then I'll twist it over here. I think the secret to this technique, to be completely honest, is to pay attention. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see what's happening. pay attention to the shape of what you are wrapping. The shape will really dictate what you do with the wire. Okay, and I'll come over here to this side. 24 gauge, bare copper, dead soft, not half hard. Some people I know use half hard for this. I really am not always as successful with half hard for stuff like this. It's a little too stiff for me. My hands can't shape it like I want. Okay. So I'm going to bring all of this around. I'm going to unclip it. And then I kind of do like a Briolette wrap at the top. Okay. I'll bring all of these together. And I'll take 2 of these wires and I will bend them down to the side. Since these are 24 gauge, I can do that. I'll treat these 2 wires as if they were one. I'm going to go through the center there. Come around. Make sure that they're the same size loop. Hold this flat. Maybe I'll use the parallel pliers for this. And these 2 that are coming out the sides, like I did that Briolette wrap, I'll wrap these 2. Okay, and again, I'll treat those 2 wires as if they were one. Pull this out of the way, clip, and flip. Okay. And then I'll come in and tighten this all around. There we go. So now if I've got a little bit of extra space here, and I do, you don't want to do this if your wire is wrapped really tightly, but I come in and I do these little, I call them lightning bolts, where it tightens up the wire. If your wire feels at all tight here, stop, because you will snap the wire. But usually you have enough room to do a little thunderbolt of wire tightening, and it just brings the wire in. Just be gentle. Again, if the wire is stiff and doesn't want to move and you force it, you're going to either break the wire or break the stone. Okay, but there we go. That looks pretty good if I do say so myself, I think, right? Something that's irregularly shaped, like let's look at something like this. Okay, yeah, CR, that is the only time I really use half hard is for making ear wires, 100%. Especially if you're making ear wires that you're not work hardening anyway, like tumbling or hammering, half hard's the way to go with those. Agree 100%. Let me get some 24 gauge here. And let's see. Yeah, half hard, Deborah, what half hard wire is it's stiff, right? So it maintains the shape that you give it. So a lot of times it's too buoyant for what I want it to do, or I can't shape it the way I want it because it's half hard. But for ear wires, it's great because it really holds the shape that you give it. And we're going to make some findings in a future show. I'm going to use dead soft and we're going to harden them. But yeah, half hard, I use them a lot with my, for ear wires. So here's my little nugget. Okay, it's round, it's slick, it's kind of hard to deal with. So this is when I look at this a little more like wrapping a present. All right, so I'll hold it around here and I'll twist. And then I'll bring this wire around. See, it wants to slide out. I've got to first cage this on 4 points so that everything holds. Come on. I'm going to bring that one up and twist. And I'm going to bring that one up and twist. Okay. So now I kind of have a cage. Can you see that there? Looks a little like the dog's breakfast, but we'll fix it up. Okay. Now I'll take this one that's coming down and I'll go around again, being careful not to pull this out from the center. Wrap it up again. Take this one now. Come down and around. Wrap it up again. This one, maybe this wants to go over here. And around, wrap it. And then let's take a look at what we've got. Okay, so I've got kind of an interesting little cage going on here. Okay, so now I'm going to come in, I'm going to bring all of this together. And I'm going to hide all of this kind of unsightly wire here. I'm going to take it all down. Up and over. This could also be with 22 gauge. 22 would be nice with this. It's a little bit heavier, so it might hold everything a little bit better. But let me get this 24 gauge right here and wrap it around. Okay, and see how those wire wraps are masking all of that unsightly business underneath. See, I'm coming around, I'm coming around, and coming around. It's like when you throw everything under the bed when you're cleaning your room. I never do that. And now I'll cut away this extra right here, being very careful not to cut the loop. Give it one more little trim there. There we go. And this, I've got a little bit of space there, so I'm going to shove, that's the technical term, underneath there. But this is just kind of intuitively looking at the shape of the stone and then supporting it. Using plenty of wire. This was like a foot. Now I'll come in and I'll tighten up this wire. Now, the way that I do this is pretty freeform. There are a lot of wire wrappers, especially wrappers who use half round or square, right? That where everything is a little more technical, a little more polished, a little more measured. But this falls, oops, see, that was kind of tight and it kind of moved on me. So there we go. This is true to kind of my jewelry style, right? There are a ton of tutorials out there on wire wrapping with square wire or half round. But there we go. See that? It's kind of pretty. Yeah, sorry about that. I was a little out of frame. Let me do this so you can see. I'm going to zoom in. You can get some screenshots here. Let me focus and get those in tighter. But look at how pretty that, there we go. That nugget, that crystal quartz, you can see the wire through it and stuff. It's really pretty, I think. And then let me get that other, this business we did here today. Okay. So there you have it. Ooh. All right. Half moon, Leticia, I would do the same thing kind of like this. I would have this wire come kind of back and forth across that crescent. I think that would look cool. You know, just experiment. Get some 24 gauge in copper. It's a good way to kind of mock it up. Right? That'll work. Okay, so my friends, let me put this banner or this back up. I think we had an epic show today of episode 2, our basic techniques in our big masterclass today for wire wrapping. We did rosary and wire wrap loops. We did briolette wrapping. We worked on closing pre-made jump rings. And of course, we wrapped an object that did not have holes in it. So you can find both of episode 1 and this episode 2 will be in our playlist, our masterclass. This is our 3rd masterclass series with wire, but it will be on our YouTube channel. Do not forget, my friends, to go ahead and follow us on all of our socials, that like, subscribe button on YouTube. And right now, go to our homepage and sign up for our newsletter because, as you know, we're having our moving sale from our third-party fulfillment to right here in Fresno. It's 20% off. So you'll save on all the tools, all that stuff. You can check the website for all of those details. If you have any questions, my friend, give us a shout out over at info@beadshop.com. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you, JP. And thank you, Janice, for all of your tips that you shared today and all of you folks out there sharing your wire tips. And thank you, Janice. It's moving 20 is the coupon code for that. Yeah. Whew. Shoo. I'll be back on Friday. I've got a kit dropping for you. It's called Hello Fall. I can't wait for you to see it. We're going to have fun times on Friday. Lots of fun things there. So I will see you then. Right now, I'm going to get back to cleaning up the studio, getting everything set. And I so appreciate you folks out there because those of you out there who support us here at beadshop.com make it possible for our small business to continue and do what we love, which is share beading love and wire love and all the jewelry love to all of you out there. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll see you folks on Friday for Free Tip Friday. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.